Riku has 3 browsers open at all times: music in the background, phone within reach, notifications like small electric shocks, and yet he cannot focus for more than 12 minutes without drifting. He calls it modern life. But late at night, when the blue light fades and the room grows still, he feels something else. A quiet shame. He remembers who he used to be, the teenager who could draw for hours without noticing hunger, the college student who would disappear into design projects like entering another dimension. Now he starts strong and dissolves quickly. A message, a thought, a craving for stimulation. He has tried everything: Pomodoro timers, productivity apps, dopamine detox weekends, noise-canceling headphones. Nothing lasts. His mind feels like a wild horse that refuses reins. One afternoon, after missing another deadline because he fell into a spiral of scrolling, Riku closes his laptop and stares at the wall. "Why doesn't my mind obey me?" he whispers. The question lingers heavier than the silence. That night, unable to sleep, he stumbles across a story about Miyamoto Musashi, Japan's greatest swordsman, undefeated in over 60 duels. A man who could maintain absolute concentration in life-or-death combat. Riku almost scrolls past. Samurai philosophy feels distant, romantic, irrelevant. But one line hooks him. Musashi spoke of Mushin, the empty mind. Not empty as in blank, empty as in undistracted. Riku leans closer to the screen. In 1612, on Ganru Island, Musashi faced his greatest rival, Sasaki Kojiro. The duel would decide reputation, legacy, survival. Kojiro arrived early, tense, pacing. Musashi arrived hours late, calm. When Kojiro raged, Musashi reportedly said, "Your mind is already defeated." The duel ended in seconds. Riku tries to imagine it. Not the sword strike, the mental state. To stand before death without internal noise. Modern neuroscience calls it the quieting of the default mode network, the brain state, where rumination softens and awareness sharpens. Creative insight, peak performance, flow, they emerge not from force, but from internal stillness. Riku closes his eyes. His mind is never still. It is constantly chewing on something. Past mistakes, future fantasies, micro distractions. He realizes something uncomfortable. He doesn't have a focus problem. He has a direction problem. His mind is not trained to rest on one thing. It is trained to chase many. The next morning, instead of diving into email, Riku does something small. He makes coffee without music, without checking his phone. He stands in the kitchen and listens to the water boil, watches the steam rise, feels the warmth of the mug in his hands. Within 30 seconds, his mind tries to escape. Think about Instagram. Think about a client revision. Think about lunch. He gently returns to the sound of pouring. It feels almost childish, but also strangely grounding. He sits at his desk afterward and opens one design file. Just one. No extra tabs. The first 5 minutes are restless. His fingers twitch toward the browser. But something subtle shifts. For the first time in months, he feels immersion. Not dramatic, but real. He works for 40 uninterrupted minutes. When he finally looks up, he feels both surprised and relieved. Maybe focus isn't about squeezing harder. Maybe it's about emptying gently. That night, he writes a single word on a sticky note and places it above his monitor. Mushin, not as decoration, as an experiment. The following week, Riku keeps the experiment alive. He chooses one ordinary act each day and treats it like training. Brushing his teeth becomes a meditation on sensation. The bristles against enamel, the taste of mint, the subtle movement of his wrist. When his mind drifts, he notices without judgment and returns. Walking to the grocery store becomes an exercise in awareness. The weight of his steps, the chill in the air, the distant hum of traffic. It feels almost too simple. But something is changing. He reads more about Musashi and discovers another principle, Heishin, the everyday mind. The idea that supreme focus is not separate from ordinary life. That sweeping a floor with full attention builds the same mental muscle as facing an opponent. Riku had always treated focus like a switch you flip only when necessary. Musashi treated it like a way of being. Modern research supports it. Studies show that mindful engagement in routine activities strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for executive control and sustained attention. Riku doesn't think in scientific terminology while washing dishes. He just notices that he feels less fragmented. Then he encounters a third idea, Zanshin, lingering awareness, not tunnel vision, not rigid concentration, but 80% attention on the primary task, 20% softly aware of the environment. This confuses him at first. He thought focus required eliminating all distractions, but when he experiments, something surprising happens. He works on a logo design while remaining gently aware of his posture, his breathing, the faint sounds outside. Instead of tightening his mental grip, he softens. His mind becomes less anxious and paradoxically deeper. He enters a state that feels almost like the teenage immersion he once knew. Hours pass without friction, but growth is never linear. One Friday afternoon, after receiving harsh client feedback, he spirals, opens YouTube, checks social media, orders takeout. The old pattern returns with familiar ease. By midnight, he feels drained and disappointed. He stares at the sticky note above his desk. Mushin. It feels hypocritical now. He considers ripping it down. Instead, he sits on the floor in his dim apartment. No music, no screen, just the buzzing discomfort in his chest. His mind screams for distraction, anything to escape the feeling of inadequacy. He doesn't move. Minutes stretch. Gradually, the emotional wave peaks and begins to fall. Underneath it, there is clarity. The relapse wasn't failure. It was habit. And habits can be retrained. For the first time, Riku understands something Musashi embodied deeply. True power is not in never losing balance. It is in returning. The next morning, he wakes early, not out of discipline, out of quiet resolve. He sits at his desk before opening any apps. Breath in, breath out, one file, one task. The mind drifts. He brings it back, again and again. Each return feels like a small repetition in a mental gym, invisible, but strengthening. He begins to see focus not as intensity, but as loyalty. Loyalty to the present moment. Loyalty to the work in front of him. Loyalty to the person he is becoming. And somewhere in that loyalty, distraction begins to lose its seduction. A month passes. Ethan's apartment looks the same. Same desk, same city noise outside the window, same glowing rectangle. But internally, the atmosphere has shifted. He begins practicing something Musashi embraced later in life, the discipline of no. The samurai called it abandoning the heart of the sword, walking away from unnecessary battles. Riku realizes how many invisible battles he fights daily. Every notification is an invitation, every email a subtle demand, every new opportunity a temptation to overextend. He used to say yes reflexively, yes to extra revisions, yes to side projects that paid little but promised exposure, yes to calls that drained him. Now, before answering, he pauses. He feels the weight of the decision in his body. Does this align with the work I want to master? Sometimes the answer is no. The first time he declines a low-paying rush project, his chest tightens. Fear whispers that he is sabotaging himself. But the next day, with fewer obligations, he sinks deeper into a personal design concept he has postponed for years. The work feels different, not rushed, not fragmented, focused. Research from cognitive science suggests that the brain has limited conscious processing capacity. Every unnecessary commitment fractures attention. Riku experiences this truth viscerally. With fewer yeses, his mind feels wider. But perhaps the hardest principle emerges quietly: solitude. Not physical isolation, he already lives alone, but mental independence. He notices how often he reaches for validation, posting a design and checking likes, sending drafts early just to receive reassurance, measuring his worth through response. Musashi spent years in caves and forests, not to escape the world, but to detach from its applause. Riku decides to experiment. 20 minutes each evening without digital input. No phone, no music, no stimulation. The first nights feel unbearable. His mind searches for external confirmation like a hand reaching for a railing. Who am I without reaction? The silence answers slowly. You are the one doing the work, not the one being seen doing it. In that distinction, something softens. He begins creating without immediately sharing, sketching ideas purely for the act itself. Designs become more daring, less filtered by imagined judgment. One afternoon, he enters a state so immersive that he forgets to check his phone for 3 hours. When he finally notices, there is no anxiety, only satisfaction. Focus, he realizes, is not force. It is freedom. Freedom from compulsive checking. Freedom from scattered commitments. Freedom from needing applause to continue. He still has distracted days, still loses hours occasionally to old habits. But the recovery is faster, gentler. He returns to the breath, to the single task, to the quiet discipline of no. And slowly his identity begins to shift. He no longer sees himself as someone with a broken attention span. He sees himself as someone in training, a modern craftsman in a digital battlefield, not fighting the world, training the mind, one moment at a time. 6 months later, Riku sits in the same chair where he once felt defeated. The difference is not dramatic, but it is undeniable. His mornings begin in silence, coffee brewed without scrolling, a few minutes of stillness before design work. His phone remains in another room until noon. He no longer measures productivity by hours logged. He measures it by depth entered. Clients notice the change before he articulates it. His work feels more cohesive, more intentional. Deadlines are met without last-minute chaos. But the real transformation is internal. The frantic tug-of-war inside his head has quieted. Thoughts still arise, but they no longer drag him instantly. He has learned the subtle art of noticing without following. Mushin is no longer a concept on a sticky note. It is a lived experience. Empty but alert. Calm but responsive. Heishin, the everyday mind, has woven focus into ordinary acts. Washing dishes, walking, breathing. Zanshin's soft peripheral awareness keeps him relaxed even during intense projects. The discipline of no protects his energy like a gate. And solitude has given him something he didn't know he was missing: self-trust. One evening, he visits his parents. While sitting at the kitchen table, his father remarks, "You seem steadier lately." Riku smiles. He doesn't explain samurai philosophy or neuroscience. He simply nods, because steadiness is exactly what it feels like. Not hyperproductive, not superhuman, just steady. Later that night, lying in bed without reaching for his phone, he reflects on the boy who once drew for hours by instinct. That boy is still here, buried under years of noise. Focus did not require becoming someone new. It required removing what fractured him. If you feel scattered as you listen to this, if your mind feels like it belongs to the loudest notification, understand this. Your attention is trainable, not through punishment, not through guilt, but through quiet repetition. Choose one ordinary act tomorrow and give it your full presence. Say no to one unnecessary demand. Sit alone for 10 minutes without reaching outward. It will feel uncomfortable. Stay anyway, because a focused mind is not rigid. It is free, free from compulsion, free from fragmentation, free to choose where it rests. 400 years ago, a swordsman mastered his blade by mastering his mind. Today, you are home. Our battlefield looks different, but the principle remains. When your mind obeys your intention rather than your impulses, you are no longer at war with yourself.